Welcome everyone to the Peruvian Pod. Today, this is a brand new podcast that Carlos and I are starting. Mainly, I'm going to be focused on my YouTube channel, but for now, we're just testing it out. The show will continue to evolve over time, but this is more of a finance-focused, life advice kind of top type of podcast that Carlos and I wanted to start. My name is Harold. I live in the DMV area, mostly in the northern side of Virginia. um, I went to JMU. If anyone here is familiar with that school, but that's a little basic about me. And then Carlos can introduce himself.
Hey guys, my name is Carlos. I also live in the DMV area, similar to Harold. I did go to a different school. I went to GMU, which is very close to DC. Yeah, I'm very excited to start this podcast. I think it's important for people of color to, start becoming aware of what it really means to be financially free, and also understand how to use the system to your advantage.
Right. That's the main reason Carlos and I started this podcast was because we grew up without I guess, a financial mentor or someone who really knew the financial layout of America. We both come from immigrant parents, and they did their best, but they just sometimes all this knowledge is hidden behind walls, and we're just trying to bring it out there for everyone.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Which is why today's topic, which Harold actually mentioned to me sometime last week, is the topic of what makes someone poor. And our main focus is the on the U.S. Since we do live here. We want to focus on what specifically the U.S. environment has in terms of making someone poor, and what someone can do to get out of that cycle, which is what we want to talk about today. So Harold, do you want to start, or should I start?
Um, First, I want to get your opinion of what defines poor for you. I know it's very different for everyone, especially if we come from a different country. Because poor over there
Mhm.
for us is kind of extreme. Even the poor here sometimes seems very lavish style compared to our home countries, at least in my opinion. But it could be completely different for yours, and I would love to get like a breakdown of what you think.
Yeah, so I thought about this a lot, and at least for me, I think poor, or being poor, has three different aspects. I think for me, you can be socially poor, meaning that you might have everything that you want, but in terms of like actual relationships and people that care about you, or an inner circle, that's one thing that I think can make someone poor. It's not like a financial sense, but it's poor mentally. That they don't have a circle that they can count on. Another thing, at least for me, in terms of poor, is financially. Financially is obvious. It's if you have money or not. And that definition, I think, uh, is very subjective for everyone, because $1,000 to me could mean something that $1,000 could mean completely different to someone else. So I think there's never a fine line between it, and I think that social financial go together. But I think the most important one is health. I think having being poor in health is far more detrimental than social and financial, because you can have everything in the world, but if you don't have, if you have a terrible way of maintaining yourself, terrible habits, you just keep doing things to your body, or keep doing things to yourself that are stopping you from becoming something. I think that's also like another way of being poor. So I think mainly for me, to kind of tie all of those three together, I think that it's very hard to define poor without having to look into like those three aspects,
Hmm.
because as much as you have so much of two things, and you're just missing like the social aspect, or you're missing health or financials, like everyone has a different base of needs. So at least for me, that's what poor means: being like able to see those three topics and seeing like where you stand. I think that's like one way that I define being poor, or what makes someone poor. So I think if people lack any of those three, I think it's more than likely that they are poor in that sort of state.
And I completely agree with you. There's definitely broad definition of poor, depending on how you see it, and that also I guess follows. Have you ever heard of Maslow's law, hierarchy law? It's a pyramid. I think you probably studied in your business class, but it's saying
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you need your bases, and then eventually you get to work on yourself. But covering the bases is the most important, which is like shelter,
hmm
basic needs, and then you can finally start working on yourself, and then be more financially independent, and then eventually be in the top of the pyramid. But what most people don't know, and what most people fail to consider, is that it's very very hard to like get past those bottom levels, just because there's a big mental fortitude that you need as someone who doesn't know anything. Back, especially back in the old days, I think it would be a lot harder to find how to be financially independent because there was an internet. The internet's so helpful now that
hmm
one of the most beautiful things. You can find answers to anything on Google in like less than like 2 minutes, and
yeah,
pretty reliable sometimes. I know there's like a lot of theories out there, like this Google's always trying to make it very what's it called? Not bipolar. Very
bias.
biased. There you go. And
hmm
I've read articles that depending on your zip code, your Google searches can change a lot. But for the most part, Google is very helpful, and I'm glad that thing exists. But considering that, um, what is one advice for you in your life so far here, living with this American mindset, but with immigrant parents, that if you knew earlier on, that what would you do? What would you change financially for you to make sure that your family's doing better than they are now and for the future? Because for me, I have a couple things that I would like to discuss, but I would like to hear your perspective first.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, the biggest advice that I would give myself, um, like a younger version of myself, is that you definitely need to pay more attention to how like the country and the country's like money flow works.
Hmm.
I only until like COVID started, I was not paying much attention into stocks, um, which I think is something that it's not hard to do, honestly, because me being a very like it was my first time ever using stocks. I was able to make like a $600 um what do you call it? I was able to, increase what I invested by 600.
Hmm.
And it wasn't hard, honestly. It was very easy. You kind of just let your money do what it needs to do.
Right.
And that's something that I wish that I would have known before,
Hmm.
because before, we would just either have cash or just put stuff in our savings account, and it was just sitting there. It wasn't really growing or anything.
Right.
uh, Not until recently that I learned that there's different ways to grow your money.
Hmm.
So that's something that I would definitely tell myself, like, you need to, and it's something that honestly should have been taught in school, like different ways of navigating it. But
Right.
I mean, I've learned now that, like, most of the time, like, people don't want you to succeed, so you just have to find ways to succeed on your own.
So do you think if you told your younger self this, that you would have listened, or do you believe the idea of having a mentor is the best way to get there? Because I know there are some people that you tell them to do, and they do it immediately, and they find a way to do it. But I also know there's other people, and there's nothing bad with either one. It's just different.
Mhm.
That if you tell them something, they won't get it until they're like guided by a mentor, not handed every solution, but at least um, guided in a way so they can figure it out for themselves, but at the same time, it's not doing it for them. Um, for you, do you think it would have been better to have a mentor and have your family be mentored in finances and everything like that, stock market, putting your money into different accounts, and having the money work for you, apparently, and or would it been more beneficial if it was taught by your parents rather than a mentor?
I mean, I think that, personally, I would have been fine with, I guess, just knowing. at least having that information out there. I guess it's also my fault for not looking into it, but you know that that's just not something that I don't. I think we talked about stocks maybe like once or twice in in like my core classes. I did take like an economics class in high school. It was like an AP economics class, and we barely talked about like the stock system.
Right.
We kind of just talked about like what economy is. So I mean, I think that the first step would definitely be just someone giving that information. I don't know exactly how they could have given it, but just made that information like present.
Hmm.
I know like one thing is searching it online, but it's a lot easier to give someone like a some sort of like informational guide, or like create some sort of like opportunity where you can talk to people who have that information. I don't know if maybe like a mentor, like an exact mentor would have, I mean, that would have definitely helped, but I think um that would have not been like so feasible,
Right.
because I'm sure mentors like would charge money and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
um
That's the biggest
yeah
issue.
but yeah but I think like the main problem, at least from my prior experience, is that there just isn't much information out there, and I don't think many people, like especially for like Hispanic communities, I don't think they take the time to um show us what those different things are. Like the only thing we really knew about were just banks, right?
Right.
Because we don't even have like stocks and stuff in our countries.
Right.
um so all that being so new, like it's very like I think it would have just been helpful if people would have mentioned it,
Hmm.
said that like, hey, this is a way to make money. But it's a very like competitive world, so there's a reason why they didn't tell us, because they want to be ahead of us rather than give us a helping hand. But I don't know, I personally would have preferred just some information rather than a mentor. um but I do see the value in a mentor, because if it's a powerful person, and they can teach the information that they have to someone who is able to keep spreading that information, I also do see the value in that. But I think like the first step would definitely be to just start educating people from a young age, or just start putting in that effort to reach people who may not even know what this is.
Right. And I completely agree with you. For me, even because for most of my life, my parents and I were on survival mode. I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure your family
Hmm.
were in the same
Yeah.
boat as us because we
Hmm.
basically came in here at the same time.
Hmm.
And they didn't really have time to go online and look up a
Hmm.
couple minutes here and there of reading what a stock does, how can you get your 401k for a company, how can you start making your money
Hmm.
work for you, because well they had to survive, they had to work like 80 plus hours a week just to
Hmm.
keep us fed and a roof over our heads and clothes in our back and send us to school. um,
Hmm.
so it's definitely, and that also comes with another part of my issue with, I guess, not society, but just the way we view things, because the harder your work doesn't necessarily mean the more you'll earn. Uh,
More money you'll get,
yeah,
yeah.
because there's plenty of people working 80 hours, but and then there's other people who work 20 and make almost triple or quadruple the amount that they would. Uh,
Hmm.
so that's another aspect that I wish I knew when I was younger, is that, of course, hard work can eventually make you money and make you a really well-rounded person, but also find a way where your time is very, what can I say, very valuable, because your time is very valuable, and use that to your advantage, because there's sometimes you can't take back. Uh, you miss time with your family and everything like that. So I guess one big advice that I would have given myself back in the days: find a job that is worth your time. Because working
Hmm.
for $7 or maybe $6 back in the day, it's not worth it. You can barely pay a
Yeah.
bill with that, if anything, and you're breaking your back every day. And for parents, especially, they had to work 80 hours just to make what someone working 40 hours would make in the office job or just doing whatever.
Hmm.
Because I've worked at corporate jobs, and to be honest, most of the time they're kind of jokes. Because
Hmm.
I hope my company doesn't hear this, but it's like that. I've worked with other companies, and it's like you do your work for 5 hours, and then you have like 5 hours to chill, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of crazy, because there's other people who work constantly working and not making as much as I am.
Yeah.
And it's
Who
like,
have to stay extra, like do all that stuff.
right, and that makes no sense to me. It's like, who the hell made that system? Like,
Yeah.
so, and then there's always your teachers are always telling you, work hard and you'll get there eventually. But they never really tell you, hey, also think smartly before you do it. Um, and
Yeah.
that's the biggest problem that school teaches is just, follow the rules and then you'll eventually get there. But that's the problem. You're following the rules for someone else, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's never going to make you rich because if you work for someone, you're helping them reach their goals in life, not yours. And that's, I
Yeah.
think, the biggest thing, at least I learned, is do something on my own. Maybe it'll work
Mm-hmm.
out, maybe it won't, but at least I'm doing it on my own. And if I make money, that's fantastic. And if I help people along the way, it's even better. But uh, for me, at least in the future, I don't see myself working for someone else. I know you have your own business, and it's going great
Yeah.
so far from what I'm hearing. And that's awesome. And I wish I could, and I wish I had something right now, but I know, it's gonna take time. I'm trying different things,
Oh
different
yeah.
avenues out, and you know, it's not a race that I
Mm-hmm.
want to finish super quickly, but at the same time, I feel like I want to. It's a really weird feeling that I have.
Yeah. No, and that makes that makes total sense. It definitely. I think, or at least I wish more people would try to work for themselves. Which I think at least this year, it has been happening. I think COVID, like it made like this gap that we have between each other like very very apparent.
Right.
Like people who were struggling like paycheck to paycheck, like they realized that, hey, like I'm killing myself out here for no one. Like everything shut down. A lot of these people had to um, you know, find ways to find money, find ways to feed their kids. And I think COVID was a very like big wake up call,
Hmm.
because I think, and a lot of these people who were affected by it, I think they also realized that through like the unemployment that happened, like the unemployment that you would get uh, from everything shutting down, you know, a lot of people were getting like 700, 800 a week, right?
Right.
And some of these people were people that have never like seen that money before,
Right.
right? Like, I've heard stories of people who were going like paycheck to paycheck, but they happen to qualify for like this unemployment, right?
Hmm.
And then they realize, hey, like, look how easy life is when I have like $800 or like seven hundred
Right.
dollars
And then,
coming in like each week.
right when they were making what, 300 before or something like that.
Yeah, when they were making like they were like scraping by 1,000 like a month. Now
Exactly.
they're just sitting at home making this much, which I think is what has caused like a lot of people to start their own things. At least that's what I've seen
Hmm.
out of this. Like I've even myself, I've come up with a lot of ideas over COVID. I had a lot of free time, so
Yeah.
I've come up with a few things that are in the works, so that way I can be, because overall for me my goal is to have multiple sources of revenue. That's what I learned from COVID. That's what my family has learned from COVID too. It's like you need to make your money work for you. You need to invest, which does take a lot of hard work, which is why I get why some people sometimes say like you need to work hard, but you need to work hard on things that mean something.
Right.
Like, as much as like I hate saying this, like working, because I've done these jobs, like I worked at the mall and stuff, like it's not worth your time, like these people don't care about you. um they just they're big corporations that just care about their bottom line.
Hmm.
So as long as you're starving yourself to go and catch a extra shift or something, you know I don't see that being like a way to live. Like I think people have like a lot of people have woken up and said that, hey, I need to work for myself rather than working for somebody else. Although you might at the beginning you might not get like all the things that a company gives you, uh like healthcare, that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
But you have to think more long term. in a few years you're gonna, be very happy that you were able to set something up yourself, where you can make the decisions, where you can decide what days you go into work, when you take off, because one aspect of life, at least for me, it's that I want to have time to do things that I enjoy.
Hmm.
Because work is fun, but there's also other things. Like I want to build relationships with people. I want to spend time with my family. My family has given up so much for me to be where I am. The least that I can do is spend time with them to help them realize that, hey, everything you've done has not been for vain. Like it's been for me to help you become very happy with where you are in the later years of your life. I want my parents to be set up. And honestly, I think the only way for me to achieve that is by doing these like small businesses, being the boss, um, using any money that I get to, reinvest and just continue growing it. And I think that's something that I wish people would realize. Uh, Even like Spanish people, man, like we can't be like destroying ourselves for like $3. Like
Right.
we can't be working for other people, man. Like
Right.
it's I realize that like getting like a licensing or like a license for like contractors and stuff, like it's not extremely hard. We are not taught that you can get it. I
Yep.
didn't know that I could open up a business in 5 minutes. I just need to go to my like government's website,
Yep. You're set.
fill in some information, and I'm set.
Yeah.
So that's at least one of the things that I think what you said, like working smart versus working hard. I think that people need to be able to find that like equilibrium, because if you do that, then you're gonna be set up whatever you want your your goals to be, or whatever you want to do in in the later stages of your life.
Right. And that's what I want people to understand if they listen to this podcast is for the schools, they teach you how to work for someone else. They don't teach you how to work for yourself or basic fundamentals of, knowing how to start a company within 5 minutes by going to your government website. They don't, that's not in any curriculum. At least I don't
That's
think so.
nothing. I never learned that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
No
never
one
learned
teaches
that.
you how to do your taxes. No one teaches you about property taxing your home if you ever own one, closing costs, and et cetera, et cetera. But they teach you, oh wait, just work for this company and then pay your bills. Uh, and
Yeah,
then or
go get that internship.
yeah, get that free
You know,
internship that these companies are offering, which is basically free labor.
free work. Yeah,
And you're not getting paid. I mean, come on, you're doing pretty much the same work as an employee there, but you're doing it for the experience, air quote. But it's not worth it. Trust me. Most of the people who do internships don't even get it, and then they move on to another company. And if they do get it, they're just, well, congratulations. Not everyone's as lucky as you. Um, but it's crazy, man. The school system really is messed up, and I wish they taught more about finances and everything. I think I took one finance class in high school, but it was a joke. It was just like how to do like QuickBooks and like
yeah.
how to
Personal finance.
exactly how to balance your book, your like what's it called? Your book, your accounting books and everything, do this little formula and
Yeah,
all that, but they didn't tell you how to like, properly budget your money. Like that's so basic. That could have been taught early on as like a child. Um, but they don't teach you. It's like and it's crazy. I've learned more outside of college in my like education years in the past
yeah.
couple months as I graduated versus my whole 12 years in college or like in elementary,
In
middle, and high
educational.
school, and then my
Yeah.
4 years in college. At least and that's in my view. I don't know how you feel about
No, that's exactly what sometimes I ask myself. I'm like, did I waste a lot of money getting a degree?
it. Yeah.
I think for me personally, the degree wasn't for me mostly. It was mostly for like my
Yeah,
parents,
me too.
because in their eyes, like that's something that um you know I guess that's like the end goal for them coming here. Like they wanted us to get a good education so that way we can be set up.
Mhm.
But little did they know that education is one thing. Education system here, at least from what I experienced, man, and what I learned in college, like the most important lesson that I learned is that we're being like trained to do like busy work, man.
Yeah.
You think about it, like all these research papers about like I had to do a research paper about like BJ's and Costco. for one of my classes.
Yeah.
It was a 40-page paper on BJ's and Costco, right? Like, sure, that's beneficial in terms of like learning how to write, but we learn how to write in high school. And me being like a business owner, and I've been, for the time that I've worked, I've been like the right hand to the person who ran the company before I got it. So I know exactly what like people, at least like small business owners, would want. No one wants to read a 50-page report. Like, I think people want quick things, right? Because there's only so much time during the day. Like, you need to get straight to the facts. I think we get told that filling out these like big papers is like super important when it really isn't, man. I think people should be taught how to dissect information in a very small way. Like, I think that would have been more beneficial instead of having to write these like 40-page papers about what's the difference between BJ's gas and like Costco's gas. Like, like, instead of like teaching that, like, why don't you teach us how to run a company like Costco, right? Like, how all that works, like what Costco's like checkbook looks like, what all these things are, right? These are things that I think people need to know, because it's not only something you apply to like a business sense, but it's also something that you apply to your personal life, right? Like, knowing how to balance like a checkbook is something that people need to know. Knowing how to like plan for a few months ahead rather than like the next week, that's something that we should have been taught in school. But sadly, like the education, although it seems like it's very like very highly regarded, they're just teaching us to be like desk workers, right?
Pretty much.
Like sure, sure, it's easy, man, but like, dude, I don't want to be sitting in a desk for like 20 years of my life,
Yeah, it gets really boring.
Yeah, like, I don't know, it's mind numbing, dude. Like, the times that I had to like sit down and do like papers, man, I would hate it. I would always push it off to the end because I knew that like during crunch time I would find a way to get it done.
Exactly.
Which is what would happen most of the time.
Exactly, yeah. And then coming back to the parent thing, like I don't blame my parents for thinking having that mentality of
Mhm.
education is the best thing because they came from a different country where the rules are completely
Mhm.
completely different.
Oh, yeah.
And education over there is really highly valued. I don't know as much as if it is today. Probably not, but
Mhm.
it's still very valuable. And it's also not the aspect of, having good education. So I think they also really care about what other people think. They're like,
Mhm.
their
Yeah.
their sisters, their aunts, their grandmas, like, oh, look, my son got an education here at in the United States at Stanford or some other prestigious
Mhm.
colleges, and it's just for them to like show you like I'm doing better than you. And
Mhm.
it's that very competitive mindset that it's really good at some points, but it's also very bad at some in another. Um, it just honestly, to be in my opinion, I wasted 4 years of my life doing shit. Um, it was
Mhm.
not worth it. The first 2 years are pretty boring. It's like high school 2.0.
Yeah, it's just a repetition of high school, man.
Yeah, and it's like
Those 2 years we could have been taught very like different things.
right, exactly. You're paying what 30,000 a semester for high school 2.0, basically for the first 2 years at least. And then after
Yeah.
those first 2 years, then you're finally you're allowed, which is really weird, to major in the stuff you actually want. Um,
Yeah.
and it's like who 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 decided an 18 or 19-year-old can support $30,000 of debt in a semester just to do high school just a little bit harder?
Right.
Like, what the,
Yeah.
who thought of that? I mean, it's a genius like business idea. Get people to
Yeah.
pay for what's
Redoing the same stuff.
exactly because in the first 2 years you're still doing history, math, calculus, science, and then you're doing like little beakers, labs in here. You're doing taking a calculus test over there or writing history papers, and it's like, wow, what the fuck did I do
Yeah.
to be back in high school again in a whole different city? Um, not
Having to like relearn everything, and it's
yeah, it's like who decided that? And that's also another reason why I think, in my opinion, people are poor is because they just decide to do what other people think is the norm.
Mhm.
And that's and I fall into that because, well, I thought I was doing the right thing of getting an education, and then some parts it actually helped. I've developed more as a person. I've met
Mhm.
incredible people in college that I will
Mhm.
remain friends for the rest of my life, and they might do great things in the future. And I always, networking is a very important thing. If anything,
Yeah.
that's the one thing I valued most about college is networking. Don't know if it's worth like $30,000 a semester, but
Yeah.
it's definitely
Mhm.
worth a good bit of my education value.
Yeah. No, and that makes total sense. And the one thing that I learned, and at least in high school, not in high school, sorry, in college, is that man, there are some people who are just straight followers.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
if you don't give them a direct set of instructions, man, they don't know what to do. And that honestly used to just like scare me because I would look at these and like some of these people, man, I see that they're getting like like jobs in like very like I guess like growing sectors, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it scares me because I'm like, hey, man, if like because if you think about it, man, like college work for the most part is not the hardest thing. Like I'm not saying I'm saying like in terms of like the business aspect, right?
Mhm.
Like if you're an engineer, if you're like a in the IT and like
Medical field.
doctor, a medical field man, no, like that, like I think college is the right move
Right.
for those, for right, but at least in the business school, man, like there were some people that unless you gave them like step by step instructions, they could not figure it out, and that scares me, man, because like I guess people are not taught to like think for themselves.
Right.
uh People like are just constantly fed these things where you need to do this way, you need to do this way, like it's not like that, right? Like
Right.
I think people need to be more creative, like people need to take classes or they need to develop courses that allow people to like you know be able to be more like self-reliant, like more independent. I also made like some very good friends from college. And like you said, I don't think networking is worth the amount of money we paid for school.
Yeah.
um but yeah, I think the education system is very it's a business. It's very, and you can tell it's very business minded, man. Like because
Mhm.
of COVID, like people are still paying like a lot of money for school, but they're literally doing it out of a computer,
Right, exactly.
right?
They're not even allowed to use the
Like
facilities
they're
within
not even
campus.
they're not even yeah.
It's a
That's what I'm saying. Like my girlfriend, like she's taking classes online, right?
Mhm.
And I can tell that it's not the same because dude, like why are we paying so much money to like look learn these things when I bet if I spent like a couple hours, man, like all the stuff that I learned in college myself, I could probably find on some like course website like on Udemy or something. uh, Probably find that on Udemy, like what was the other one, like Lydia,
Yeah.
right? Like that was another one where they taught
Mhm.
you things, how to do things, like and I think those are things that I think employers would rather have than someone who's has spent like 4 like 8 years in school, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Bec- because I don't know, man, like that. I think the education system is going to change a lot. I think COVID has made people realize that hey, like we're kind of being like screwed over here. I think it's more of a title now, but I think now that jobs are looking for more for experience rather than like accreditation.
Mhm.
I think that hopefully will make the education system change a bit where they can maybe start charging people less for information that can probably be found like somewhere online.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think Google's doing something similar, with their
Yeah, they
Google
are.
certificates, if I'm
Yeah,
correct.
like I personally have like done at least when I was in Mason, like I wasn't told by like a professor or anything to do, but I looked into like some of the certifications they have uh for like SEO, like marketing things like AdWords. and to my surprise, most of them are free,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, you just have to put the time in. And I tried it. It wasn't the hardest thing, and that's something that I can put on my resume.
Exactly.
And because like, and what's funny is that when I've spoken to people, like, that's one of the things that they say, "Oh, you've done that Google." I'm like, "Yeah." They don't ask about, "Oh, like, where'd you go to school?" They're like, "Oh, you did that
They
thing."
don't care.
I'm like, "Oh my God." Yeah, I'm like, "Wow."
Yeah, they
I spent all that
yeah,
time.
they could care less where you go to college. Honestly,
It's
they
it's more like checking a box.
exactly. They never even ask you. I mean, you could lie your whole way through and be like, "Yeah, I went to Harvard," and like, "Oh, that's cool." And but what did you do? Like experience wise, like, "Oh, well, I did this and that." Oh, like, "Oh, that's okay. That's cool. That's more better." It's definitely very frustrating. Um,
Mhm.
and that also brings up another topic of it being so frustrating that it can be very emotionally daunting to someone.
Mhm.
Because that's how, at least from my research online, is how the wealthy stay wealthy and the rich stay rich, is because their parents teach them how to do everything right when they're young, so they don't have to do it when they're older. Um,
Mhm.
they have the access of their parents' money to start businesses, and fail right away rather than wait 20 years when you're in your 30s to actually start something and then fail.
Yeah, when you have a family
Right,
and
exactly.
kids.
Because no one wants to fail when you have to take care of your kids or take care of your
Yeah.
parents when they're elderly, and that's the advantage of having money when you grow up, and that I don't think many people
Mhm.
talk about it, is that the one advantage you have on um, your life is you have time, because
Yeah.
you could ask mom and dad. I'm pretty sure, they won't say no, because, I'm sure they want you to
Succeed.
fail and succeed,
Yeah.
because that's what they did, but you have the advantage of asking someone. Imagine coming to
Yeah.
this country not even speaking English and having just to work. You can't really ask them, "Hey, can you teach me about finances?" Because that's not on your mind. You're trying to feed your
Yeah, they don't have
kids.
time.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's one advantage is that I don't see many people talk about. It's like the wealthy, their kids have such a huge advantage. They can fail all over again, but always have that cushion of money. Uh, and it's so important because, while money is not everything, it definitely helps. Uh,
Oh, yeah, no, it's see, I would say personally, man, money is like 95%, right? Uh, because, you know, and a lot of people always like say, like, it's not everything.
mhm,
It's not, but it does make things very easy. Like, if you have money, man, you can spend time with your family.
right,
Like, if you have money, you can go on these adventures that you're gonna talk about when you're like 80, right? Instead of talking about, oh, I remember how I used to like kill myself every day, to make sure that you were able to go to school,
right,
do that,
yeah, and
you know, and like, coming back to, you said, like, our parents work like 80 hours a week, to do that. And what sucks is that, our parents have been, I guess brainwashed might be too harsh of a word, but they get shoved down this idea that, you have to go to school, right? Like, you have to
mhm,
invest all this money in school. It and like you said, it's like that in our countries. Like, in our countries, you go to school, you're successful. But
mhm.
the good thing about America is that it's not like that here. Like, people can make money out of anything, right? Like, people are like, there's OnlyFans, man. There's TikTok. Like, people are making money out of just
They make more than
dancing, yo.
anyone. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I
Which
get the
is
appeal of OnlyFans, but and then that also raises another question, like, why are you making so much more money than someone out there really killing themselves, working like 80 plus hours a week and not being able to
Mhm.
see their kids? You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's
Yeah, I
like
mean,
the
it's not
worst
like.
thing, and it's not like a
Mhm.
bad thing. It's just it's just a crazy idea of how different we value things. We value, I guess, some people are really willing to spend like $100 per person on OnlyFans just to see them for like 2 minutes. Um,
Mhm.
and then it's crazy the idea of like what we put our money into and like how we allocate our pay to certain people. We'd
Yeah.
rather pay someone $100 just to see like a nude for like 10 seconds than someone working out there making sure your electricity is working right, or
Yeah.
making sure
Yeah, or like
Wi-Fi
someone
connect,
who's
yeah,
like
or
picking your food, your vegetables that you get at Whole Foods,
right,
you
and
know,
it's such a
that
crazy. I mean, I'm not no hate on OnlyFans, make your money, make your bread, but it's
yeah, get the bag.
exactly, it's just it's such a weird concept to grasp as the more you dig
Mhm.
into it. It's like, why do we do that? And like, it's kind of frustrating at the same time because you see your parents work so hard and you're like, what is going on? And that's why I'm saying not always working hard pays the bills or does better for you. You have to work smart. And
Yeah.
people who do OnlyFans for the most part are pretty smart. I mean, they see a
Yeah, they're
market out
getting
there for
money out of
people
it.
who are willing to pay $100 for nonsense, and they do it. And then it's like, why would you
Yeah.
do that? But
Yeah, and I feel like it's a slap honestly like a slap in the face of people who do, you know, kill themselves for for to provide food every week. Dude, just because I don't and this all goes back to what we were saying at the start. There's just a very, very like large gap between people who know what's going on between people who don't. And what sucks is that most of the time, like people of color are the ones that don't know. So we are like stuck on this cycle that, oh, you need to save all your money to send your kid to college so that he can, and college is not cheap. Like even if people have like, uh what do you call it? Like like AIDS, like, they get their college paid for, like even if you're spending like 5,000 a semester, y- you know, for 2 years, that's like 20,000. $20,000 is more than enough to start a business,
mm,
right? Like, how easy is it to start like a convenience store? How easy is it to start like, a landscaping business? Like, how easy is it to start a painting business? Like, a lot of the times, man, like these are things that people are like constantly looking for, right? But we don't get taught these things, man. Like, we get told that, oh, you need to send your kid to college so that way you can give $20,000 to someone just so that your kid has a check mark next to you,
right,
right? Like, and that's the sad reality, man. That like I mean, at least my parents didn't know that, and I realized it like way too late. I realized it when I was in my like third year of college. I was like, hey, I'm not learning much because if the way that I thought about it, man, is I would do all my assignments like last minute, like very half-assed,
yeah,
most of the times, because it was a lot of it was stuff that wasn't interesting, man. I didn't find it interesting.
exactly.
But even if I would do that, I guess what I would get, dude, I'd get A's, like B pluses, like, those things. And then that made me realize, I'm like, hey, like, the education system doesn't really care, who's like the brightest, who does that. It's, oh, who's giving me money, right?
Right.
As long as they can fill in all the seats in class, whatever. Like, they don't care.
Yeah, I've literally saw my professor grade in front of me. I was in his office for like a couple minutes asking him a question about the exam we had, and he was grading it by looking at the page for like 2 seconds. He's like, "Oh, that's good, that's good, that's
Hmm.
good."
Like,
Okay,
I spent 8 hours on this. You're gonna look at it. You're gonna give it to your TA.
exactly.
Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, yo, you're telling me someone who's 2 years older than me is grading my paper is not you? Like, come on. What
Exactly,
am I? What are we paying for?
exactly. It's like, what the? And it made me so mad every time. I'm like, "Ah, whatever. I'll just do it like an hour before it's due, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I'll get a B or more. Or if anything,
Mm.
it was just like really crappy. I'll probably get like a C if anything, but it it was not worth my time. And it's very crazy,
Yeah.
crazy idea.
Yeah, man. And honestly, like, I I think like this whole conversation, what it like goes back to, man, is, you know, it's just the gap between people who know and people who don't know, and that's what makes someone like poor, which is what we like kind of set out to talk about.
Right,
Um, like, being stuck in a cycle where you're told that something is right when, if you really sit down and think about it, it's not. But sadly, our parents didn't have time to think. I honestly didn't have time to think for most part, man, because I was working a lot, right? Like I
Yeah.
was working as much as my parents were, but I wasn't working as hard as they were in terms of, like they were doing like manual labor, that sort of stuff. But, I was doing like office work, that sort of stuff. But I didn't have time to like really analyze it. I was like, oh, like this is what most people do. So I think this is like good.
Hmm.
So, I think it's very easy to talk about what the problems are, which is, what we've been doing. But I think like we need to find a solution to this. Sadly, I think people who are higher up there, even like our own like president, even like our own party systems, a lot of it, I don't really think that they care too much for people like us who are like struggling to survive, right?
Exactly.
Um, so I think that honestly, we're gonna have to be the ones that come up with solutions in the end, because obviously things have been going on for so long that no one's doing anything,
Yeah.
which sucks. Which it shouldn't be that way. Like we have a government and we have people in high positions for a reason, but they don't really care about that. So I think it's good for our community to start learning about these things, which is what we're hoping to do with this podcast. At least personally, I want to use like real life examples. I want to use experiences that I've had with people who really like work 3, 4 jobs to just make sure that their kids have food on the table, right? Like as much as like I hate seeing that, it's just I see that it's very hard. It would be very hard for that person to break the cycle,
Right.
if someone doesn't help them, right?
Right.
And sadly that's going to have to be us, because like I said, no one cares. So
Yeah.
I think that it's about time that we start coming up with solutions on how to do this, how to abuse the system
Mhm.
like people who have privilege do. So
Yeah, so for anyone who's listening out there and just happen to be a first generation college student or first generation American from immigrant parents, my best advice to you is get educated, but on the right things. Do your own research online. Read a bunch of finance books. Read a bunch of empowerment books, leadership books. As cliche as it is, this is what rich people are doing, what wealthy people are doing, what they get taught on a daily basis, and I guarantee you have time as a first generation college student or first generation American. I'm pretty sure you have more time than your parents, and as unfair as it is to put all that weight in your shoulder, it's the only way you are gonna make a good future for you and your family. Uh, because your parents are more focused on making sure you survive, but they don't really know anything else. So for anyone out there, just read read some books, watch some YouTube videos on how to budget money. Dave Ramsey's a good example. I don't agree with everything he says, but there are some good things he's talking about. But help your parents out as much as you can, but also educate them every time when you're eating dinner together. Just talk about this. Make it a more casual conversation. Don't hide it away from them.
yeah,
Don't be
it doesn't
afraid of
have to be
talk
an
about
argument.
money and like your
Yeah,
future. And I'm sure they would love to hear it. Um, they might not understand at first because my parents certainly didn't. They're like asking questions. They're like, "Are you sure like this is that blah blah blah? Like, are you sure you didn't want to go to college? Are you sure you regret going?" Because I told my parents straight up, I wasted my time. They're like, what do
yeah,
you mean you wasted your time?" I'm like, "Dad, Mom, if that was my younger sister who's 17 right now, I would have not got to college, just to be honest." And then we got into like our debate of why not to do it. And towards the end, I eventually saw that they're like, "Well, yeah, that makes sense." And it's because we never talked about it. I was always afraid of
yeah,
telling me like, "Hey, I don't really want to go to college," but I went for them because I thought that's what was the right thing to do because they thought that was the right thing to do. And it's crazy. Just educate yourself, read as much as you can. Definitely get a group of people that will follow you and help you along the way, who have the same mentality as you. Um, if you can't find them in real person, there's Facebook, there's Reddit, there's many people that have the same mentality and are probably in the same situation as you are.
No, and that's spitting straight facts. It's okay to have those uncomfortable conversations with your parents. Even though you don't think so, but your parents do have a bone of reason in their body. I know for some of them it might be harder to reach, but the first step is definitely having like that conversation where you need to say, hey, we can't keep destroying our lives, like reducing our lifespan, working for someone else, or working so many hours to make the amount that someone who has learned all this information is making in like a day, right?
Yeah.
It's something that that definitely needs to be talked about. These are conversations that we need to start having with our parents. We need to start having with each other, even as friends, right? Like,
Hmm.
you don't always have to talk about, oh, like, what are you doing today, right? Like, you don't, oh, you want to go get drunk, you want to do all this stuff. There's always time for that.
Hmm.
Like a lot of that stuff is fun, but what's also fun is setting yourself up for the future, setting your parents up, even repaying them for the sacrifice that they've made, which is a big sacrifice.
Hmm.
Our parents came here with no knowledge, with no money, with nothing to give us like a better future. Like it's our responsibility to take care of them as much as our parents might have been very shitty to us or very crappy. I think people just need to realize that they are just trying to keep us alive. That's the only thing they know.
Straight
But
facts.
we need to stop that cycle. And the only way we're going to stop that cycle is if you guys start taking control of what you learn, of what you do. It's a very hard road. I'm not going to say it's easy, but if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, right?
Straight. Exactly.
So,
Very true.
and like Harold said, the community helps. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to provide as much resources as we can, to get you guys in the right direction. Like we'll put links to podcasts or just cool YouTube videos that give you a new perspective on things. That's something that will definitely help you guys. We want to help you guys on that journey, but we can give you guys a push, but you also need to take
Right.
that initiative to take control of your life.
Right. And biggest thing is, at least for me when I was growing up, is like there are no excuses really anymore. Um, if you're not a big reader, like I said, get educated, read books. Well, there's audiobooks now. You don't have to read if you're not a big reader, or there are YouTube videos you can watch are very fun and educational if you have no attention span whatsoever. But there's no excuse. Pretty sure your parents told you the same thing. Suck it up. And as hard as that is to hear, sometimes it is. It is true. Just suck it up. Read, listen, uh, preach to other people. Teach them as well. That's the best way to teach yourself as well. And just, that's at least my opinion for now. And then I'm sure in the future we'll have different opinions, and maybe we change our minds on certain aspects of what we talked about today. But that's part of growing up. That's part of getting more
Yep.
knowledge in ourselves. Part of life experiences. Things change, and that's okay. Just learn how to adapt. I think is a major thing for us. But just to wrap it up here, because I think we're hitting an hour. If I'm wrong, Carlos, or
Oh yeah, no, we're almost there.
oh, geez. Well, that
Um,
mean that was fun. Talking about this. Hopefully, one day it's not a big cliche to everyone. You know, it all starts with a simple conversation, and then from there it can evolve to something very, really beautiful if you know how to take care of it properly. In my opinion.
mhm. Yeah, no, and yeah, everyone's journey is different. Not everyone's gonna reach the finish line at the same time, but the important thing is that you are aiming for the finish line, and that one day you will reach it. If you really want it, you can get it,
Exactly my
right? Like,
thought. Well,
yeah.
I guess we're gonna close the show. Thank you to everyone who listened to our first podcast here at Peruvian Pod. We'll be uploading as much as possible. We'll try to get a schedule set, but we're still trying to figure everything out, honestly. This is our first attempt. We had to practice one last week, but you know how it is. Life gets busy. Sometimes it's hard speaking in the mic, to be honest, and coming up with ideas. But we'll get stuff out there. We'll have resources for you guys, links in the chat and everything like that. We'll see if we can make a Discord for it too as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Discord for you guys to have
yeah,
just access to these things. Start sharing these things with your parents. Start having those hard conversations. You guys can do this, man. We if we were able to get our journey started, you guys will definitely be able to.
yeah. And we can try to build a community here. It's not a bad thing to talk about money, but it's also a very bad thing not to talk about it. You're just ignoring a problem, and that's not okay. So, in at least for our community here, just talk about anything you want. Also, of course, I know there's some they might this might be seem a little pushy or arrogant in our part for saying you can do it, but definitely take your time. Like Carlos said, not everyone finishes at the same time. Take a mental day. Take care of yourself first because you don't want to regret it later in the future. But also keep pushing every single day if you can. But there's nothing wrong with taking a day off or two, especially recharging your battery and everything like that. There's many studies are saying that you should not overwork yourself because you hinder productivity, and then that's even worse than continuing working and then making mistakes for no reason. But also take care of yourself, which is another thing we probably will talk about next time is how to take care of yourself. Getting
Yep.
group of friends and everything like that, relaxing,
How
drinking.
to relax.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to drink to have fun. Like I said, that's a society thing that people have pushed at us. Beer companies pushed. You have to have a drink to have fun. That is BS. If your fun is
Yeah. You
playing
gotta have
Dungeons
fun
and
anyways.
Dragons, if your fun is playing League of Legends, if your fun is reading, do it. Whatever your
Yep.
fun is, just find it and do it. If you can do it with a group of people, even better. Socialize. Very, very important thing, especially now since pretty much everything's closed. Find a way to do it online on Zoom, on Adobe Connect, other Snapchat. I guess people still use. I have no idea if they still use,
Yeah.
but
Any way you can, man. You need to start talking to people, and that's all we can say for now. Definitely tune in and next time for us to continue giving you some of the advice that we have gotten from people. We want to pass it on to you guys. So definitely thank you for listening. Be on the lookout for our next episode, which will probably be sometime next week. And like Harold said, we're going to talk about different ways to relax while continuing to go on your journey.
right. Thank you for everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.
Bye bye.